Hey, good morning or good afternoon, wherever you're at. I assume you can hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine.
Great.
Thanks for joining us once again today,
You bet.
and I can see your screen as well. So I think we're good to go.
Okay, fantastic. So uh, we're going to talk about some advanced MP authoring. I do a lot of sessions in MPU around leveraging fragments. And basically we're going to kind of continue the story about these today. So just a quick refresher for people that haven't taken the jump into using fragments in MP authoring. Just a quick understanding of what is a fragment. It's a piece of XML that basically just contains working parts of a management pack. They're designed to be reused over and over again and ask you just for the data you need that's unique or different on each use. And the benefit of this, obviously, is it takes things that are really complicated to write at times in an authoring tool, and it makes it really easy for you to use it over and over again. And they work in Visual Studio and also in Select MP Studio and MP Author Pro. So those are some things to keep in mind. And just to give you an idea, we're up to about 85 fragments that I've written. There are other community people that write fragments as well, and I'm sure individual consultants kind of keep their own libraries up to date. But if you want to go download mine, they cover just a wide range of all kinds of common MP authoring scenarios. And every time I do one of these sessions, somebody comes up with a question about, what about something that does, X, Y, or Z, and I always get great ideas, and I'm constantly adding to these. So after this session, I'll update my fragment library, and it'll be a new version will be available for download that'll include some of the new stuff that I'm demoing today. So talking about what we're going to demo today, I'm going to do two fragments that are relatively new. One of them not so new, but not so well known. So I want to kind of do a spotlight on it. So the first one is, I had some questions around, hey, can SCOM distribute files and even execute those files kind of like as a software distribution mechanism? And the answer is yes, it absolutely can. It's not really designed to be a software distribution mechanism, and I'll get into the issues there. But there are some custom scenarios where I had some customer feedback that they really needed to distribute a custom file through the SCOM channel, and this goes through the firewalls because the SCOM channel on TCP 5723 is already open, and they wanted the ability to be able to drop a specific customized file in a specific directory on a SCOM server, whether it was a gateway or your agents, and there's all kinds of scenarios you can come up for doing that. So I created a fragment that makes that an easier process because previously it wasn't real simple to create one of those and set that up. And then the other one we're going to go over today is a performance monitor that use an enriched alert description. So one of the challenges with performance monitors is oftentimes you want to know more data in the alert than what's available from perf data. So there are scenarios where if a disk fills up, I want to know a lot more information about that disk and what's consuming the space. Or if the CPU alert is triggered, I really want to go gather additional data like process information so I can know when the alert was triggered, what was the offending process that was, consuming all the CPU. These are things that customers often ask for. And the way we provide them today in monitors is through diagnostics and recoveries. And that means you have to use the console, you have to drill into Health Explorer. And a lot of customers who use ticketing systems, they don't want to use our consoles. They want all of the data possible to be in that alert where that's necessary. So I've got a fragment that makes that a very efficient process to be able to execute a script after a threshold is breached. And that's much, much better than running a script every time we monitor, like the way our current CPU monitoring is in SCOM. So in my opinion, this is a better example of how to do CPU monitoring, but it can be applied to anything where we start with a perf counter, we breach a threshold, and then we want to gather more data for the alert. So let's go ahead and jump into that. So the first one we're going to look at is a fragment that will distribute and even optionally execute a file on an agent that's embedded inside of a management pack. So I've got this new fragment. It's really easy to use. It just asks you for some basic information. And it starts off with a rule that does a time script that copies a file to a destination of your choice. And then in order for that to work, you have to bundle that file into a management pack binary or an MPB. Or a management pack bundle, sorry. So the management pack bundle is, normally we kind of work with XML or .mp files. Most people do not create management pack bundles. And they're basically just a standard management pack. But the difference is they have the ability to include other objects like images or DLLs or custom scripts that you want dropped onto the file system, or they could be just any binary file that's included. So we use MPBs all the time today. You'll see that like in the SQL Management Pack, anytime an MP depends on some other module. So like if you look at the new SQL agnostic MPs, they deliver tons of DLL. So they don't write all of their code in scripts or in the management pack itself. When they really want to do complex things that a scripting language just is a tall ask, they'll include code that they've written inside of a management pack bundle, and we could do the same thing. And so this will be an example of that. And then the benefit is it uses the SCOM channel that's already open, that's already existing to distribute the file. Now that's good and bad. The good is, hey, all the firewalls are open. I don't have to mess with any ports. I know I can distribute this file anywhere I have a working SCOM agent. The bad is SCOM was not designed to be a software distribution mechanism. You would never want to do this to actually deploy software. And the reason that's bad is because when you import that management pack bundle, if you included a 30 megabyte file, that means everyone on the network is going to download 30 megabytes at exactly the same time. And we don't really have a throttling mechanism the way SCCM does or other real software distribution mechanisms. So my advice would be, if you're going to use this, make sure your files are relatively small and you're not going to create a network bandwidth impact when you deploy the management pack. Now, once it's deployed, the agent should only download it the one time, and they would only need to re-download it if they get their cache flushed or if you update the management pack in some way. So it shouldn't be a continual network impact, but certainly on the first import, you'll see that. And if you go look at Microsoft management packs, you'll notice our MP bundles are larger. They're larger in size, and that's because they contain binary files for the most part. So just something to be aware of if you're going to play with this. So the fragment itself is super simple. It's just got a rule. It's one rule. That rule has a scheduler data source, and that scheduler data source just runs on a time frequency. By default, I think I've got it set to once a day. And then that rule kicks off a write action. That write action is just a PowerShell script write action. It's very basic. And what it does is it copies a file. So all the resources, when you bundle files within an MPB, they get extracted on the agent to this folder you see here called the Health Service State Resources folder, and it'll just put an arbitrary number for each resource. And you'll see if you go look on an agent there, you'll have these already existing for other MPBs. And if you bundle your own, that's where it'll get copied. So you don't know exactly what, that's kind of a random number from what I can tell that gets chosen as far as the folder goes. but we can actually pass that location as a parameter to the script. And so then we can move that file or copy that file out to a dedicated directory if we want to. So there we have lots of options, or we can just execute it while it's in that directory. So that the overwhelming majority of MPVs don't copy them out. They use them and leverage them in the resource structure, folder structure. But it's totally up to you what you want to do at that point. You know, you can you can copy it, you can leave it where it is, you can execute it in place. So here's an example of what that looks like. This is just a simple rule within the fragment. This shows like once I've run through the fragment and I wanted to copy, you know, maybe the mom agent MSI file, because I want to, maybe I could use this to actually upgrade my agents from SCOM 2012 or 2016 to SCOM 2019, because I could embed the agent in a management pack and it would automatically be copied down to everyone. The downside of that is that agent file in SCOM 2019 is 30 megabytes. So you'd have to think about, okay, what's the impact of all my agents downloading 30 megabytes at once? If you've got under 500 agents, probably nothing. You know, but if you have thousands or even tens of thousands of agents, you really have to think about, you know, and understand what the network impact is going to be. So here you see I have a scheduler data source. And I have it runs once a day, 86,400 seconds, and then it calls a write action, and that write action passes that path. And so this path, you'll see this dollar file resource path. This is the directory that's on the agent itself. So on every agent, it could be different, but this is where we can pass that as a parameter. And then in my example, I said, hey, I want to copy this out. So I pass this location as a parameter. You can do this, or you can customize this however you want. It's just PowerShell. But basically, I create this folder if it doesn't exist, and then I copy the file to it, because maybe I want to execute it later. I'm just going to start by getting the agent file or the update files down first. All right, let's go ahead and do a demo then of what this looks like. So I'm going to go into my environment, and now I can use Visual Studio or I can use Select MP Author. For the purpose of today's demo, I'm going to use Select MP Author, but both support fragments, and it's pretty simple to use either way. So I'm going to create a new management pack, and I'm just going to call this copy agent demo.copy agent, and save it on the path for that. And I choose what version of SCOM, what's the minimum version of SCOM I want to support with this. You know, I'm at SCOM 2016 or later, so I'll just choose that and create an empty management pack. And here we are. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do, I just have a nice empty management pack. So the first thing that I want to do here is, let me get this sized up. I want to import a fragment. And so that's built right here into Silex tool. And let me show this off. So I'm going to browse, and I'm going to, since I haven't published these yet, I'm going to go straight to my repository. And I'm going to choose this fragment called rule timescript distribute file. All right, and these are the things that it's going to ask me for over here on the left. It wants to know, you know, what's your company ID, what app name. You know, these are all, if you get into fragments, these are very, very standard things. So I'm going to call this demo, and my for my company ID, my app name is just going to be copy agent. For a target class, this is basically who do I want to run this. So I tend to, you know, the health service agent would be a good one, or I can just choose Windows Server operating system if I want this to go out to all my servers. And then I give it a unique ID, and this is the unique ID for the workflow. So Whoops, let me see here. So for this unique ID, I'm just going to call this copy agent update file. And then the destination path, and if you notice down here below, I'll list out in my fragments a description of everything that you need to provide and what it means. So the destination file path is just where you want your embedded file to be copied to on the agent. You can change this. You know, it's just a simple PowerShell parameter. But I'm going to choose SQL and SCOM agent files. And then the file name. Now, this is really important. Your file name that you provide, this needs to be 100% correct, because when we provide this to the XML, later when we create our bundle, it looks in that directory for this for a file with that name, and it's going to bundle it in the MP at that point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bundle an example of putting UR8 in a management pack. And so the update rollup 8 for SCOM 2016, this allows me to publish it down to the local system, and then I could have another rule or the same rule actually execute it if it detects that UR8's not deployed. So if you didn't have SCCM, if you didn't have a good way of reaching systems that are like firewalled off behind DMZs, you might consider something like this. The agent update is only about 7 megabytes, so it's not that huge to be able to deploy. Okay, so I've got the name in there, and what you can see is if you look down here in the XML, you can see that it's actually finding and replacing these things. So this write action is the script. And let me show you some examples in the rules. So here in the rule, it's actually, you know, updating the SCOM agent files. And I don't think I can see the language packs. Yeah, I could go into the full XML editor here. Let me do that really quick. Yeah, and you'll notice there is this deployable resource ID for resources. These are the files that are going to get deployed. And so when I deploy that file name, that actually replaces a parameter right here. So this gets put in the XML, not the file itself, but just a pointer to the file. And then later we'll build this in an MPB. Okay, so let me close this. I'm pretty happy with how this looks. So I am going to, I don't have my button. I wonder if this is because of the resolution that I'm in.
Kevin, Mike here.
Yeah.
We've seen this with a couple other systems, and I did put a fix in. You may not have the latest version.
I don't.
Okay, so we'll get you set up. If you
I can switch my resolution. Is that the best thing?
hit enter and see what happens.
Okay. Let me tab out. No.
Yeah, you'd have to tab to the right control, unfortunately. It is resolution dependent, and it's a bit of a problem from.
Okay, let me just pull it over here to another screen, and yeah, sure enough, import fragment. Yeah, and so yeah, that worked fine. Just going through it one more time. So I got that now. Okay, and so I've imported that. That creates the rule. So I can see that over here. That's going to copy the file, and I can see the resources and things like that. I'm just going to save this management pack, and then go over here to my folder, and you can see it is just a straight up XML management pack at this point. So the next step now is I want to create my management pack bundle. So I'm going to copy this file, and I am going to paste it in a folder that I've already created that has MPB util. Now this is MPB util is a free tool that Silec publishes. You can go download it. They've made it available on their website, and it makes it really easy to create management pack bundles. There's also a PowerShell script that's available on the web for download that was created originally for Service Manager, but you can also create Management Pack bundles in PowerShell. So you don't have to use the binary if you wanted to embed that in a Management Pack or something, but either one worked fine. Okay, and so then the next thing I'm gonna do is I've got my command line, so I'm just gonna copy this, but if you wanna see it, I'm basically just gonna call MPB util and tell it, the name of my MPB that I want, the server or the Management Pack folder to go get your reference Management Packs, the XML file that you have, and hopefully I named it correctly. Yep, copy agent, and then any resources you want to embed in it. So now that I have that, I'm just going to go to PowerShell and I'm going to execute that command. And it's creating my bundle. If everything is going well, yep, looks like it completed without error. And so I'm going to do there we go, MPB. So I'm going to do basically a list, and it will show me that it has my Management Pack and the resource that's within this that's been embedded in this Management Pack. This is MPB. So you'll notice I have the Management Pack bundle that got created by the utility from my XML and my resources. And so all I'm going to do is deploy it now. So I'm going to go to import Management Packs and import my MPB. And there we go, it's imported. So what's happening right now is there's a config update that's happening inside of SCOM, and it's notifying all the agents that there's a new Management Pack and that they should all download it because they all have a copy or an instance of the Windows Server operating system that I targeted the rule to. So all the agents will get a config update, then they'll get a notification to download the new Management Pack. They'll download it, they'll apply the Management Pack changes, and then shortly after that, we should see the rule run for the first time. And so as long as the demo gods are happy with me today, that it'll happen just like that. So I'm going to go to a server, and I'm just going to look at an event log and refresh it. And so, yep, so I've got a config update, the 21024. I received new config, 21025. And then I've got a 1200. And so this basically just says I've requested a new Management Pack. So on the C drive, I'll notice I don't have any SCOM agent folders here. So that it hasn't actually executed or deployed that. But that, if everything goes well, that's what I would expect to see, right? The agent is going to download the Management Pack. It's going to run the script that's going to create the folder since it doesn't exist, and then copy the file over, or execute it optionally, whatever. So I have now received the Management Pack, and I can see that it is demo.copy agent. So that's the one that I just imported. And there's a 1210 that says I've applied it. And now I have some scripts that I've embedded in my Management Pack scripts that say, hey, the copy agent file is running. I'm running as NT authority system, which is the default agent action account. And here is the parameter that got passed. You'll notice this agent health service state resources 659. That's the file that actually got transferred. And then here's the parameter of where I want it to be distributed. And if I look through my events, I'll see, oh, destination folder doesn't exist, so it's going to create it. And then it copied the file successfully and it completed. And you'll notice the runtime really short. To actually run a script in SCOM is incredibly efficient. because of the PowerShell module that's part of the monitoring host, and it runs really, really quickly, even something as complicated as a file copy built in. So theoretically, if I come here, I have the SCOM agent files folder. I'm going to go into that, and there it is. And there's my agent update. So this is a real simple script that I created. All it does is copy the agent file to a specific directory, but I could do anything with it. I mean, from that same PowerShell, I could run a simple detection to say, do you have UR8? If you don't, then I could execute it by looking at like the agent version or a file version or something. I would probably do it more in a two-step thing. I would have like one workflow distribute it, and then I would have another workflow that I could enable slowly if I wanted to, maybe only enable it via group, or I only wanted to do this patching for servers behind a DMZ or something like that. And it doesn't have to be patching, right? It can be any file that we want to distribute. It can be a resource that we need for a custom script that we wrote. Maybe we have our own code that we want to use, or it can be something as simple as, hey, I need to get these files. I had the customer request that started all of this was actually they wanted to run a query against a CMDB on the management server and get a list of servers that needed to take some action. And then we wanted to transfer that list, that text file, down to a gateway server where we could then run another workflow against that list. But that way the list was dynamic. It was updated every day from a CMDB, so it wasn't something static. And where my gateway was, I didn't have access to the CMDB. So that just shows you another example where you may want to transfer a file. And that method could be fully automated. You could literally run the CMDB, get a new file, have another workflow that automates a new MPB and imports it into SCOM, and then executes it, down on the gateway. But there you go. So the next demo fragment that I want to do is performance monitors with awesome alerts. That's what I call it. And so this is a simple fragment. I wrote it a long time ago for a very specific scenario, and there's been some other authors that have actually done demos on this fragment and how to use it, but I still consistently find people with a business challenge or a monitoring challenge in SCOM, and they don't realize this exists, and it solves their issue perfectly. So this is a simple perfmon data source consecutive samples monitor. You guys probably write hundreds of those all the time where you just look at a perf value. You say, must go 3 consecutive samples or 10 consecutive samples, and then you do the monitor state change and generate an alert. What this does is once the threshold is crossed, and only if the threshold is crossed, do we run a script to gather more data. And the benefit is this way I'm not actually executing scripts that might be expensive all the time, that I only run them once I've determined that something is wrong and now I need to gather more data. So instead of a diagnostic or a recovery action to a monitor, I gather this data before generating the original alert. And then I can pass it into that alert. So we output that script data to a rich alert description. I'll show you what that looks like. So in this example, and you can use any perf value you want, and your PowerShell script can do anything you want to do in PowerShell. But in this example, I'm going to monitor perfmon for high CPU. And then once a threshold is breached for enough consecutive samples, we're going to run a script to gather the process list. And then we're going to take that process list and output it into the original alert that said the CPU was high. So the person receiving the ticket will know exactly where to start their troubleshooting process or what's wrong. The other place that this is valuable is a lot of times we get CPU alerts, and by the time the ticket is generated and it gets assigned and a person goes and investigates, the high CPU condition is gone. And so we don't have a good record of what it was and how to troubleshoot this. And this way we get to see that in the original ticket. So this is a very simple management pack fragment as well. It simply contains a monitor and a monitor type. The monitor only has the custom alert configuration. So it takes these property bags from my script and puts them into the alert description. And the monitor also passes the script body. So if you want to modify this and tweak it to be able to do whatever you want, that's literally right there in the monitor configuration. And then it also has the perf values and thresholds like a typical performance monitor. So for most, other than the script, it looks like a standard perf monitor. Now we do use a custom monitor type for this because it's a performance data source, but it also includes the script probe action, which is what makes it a little bit different than our built-in one. And so here's what that looks like. This is the monitor itself, and on the alert settings, this is all standard monitor stuff, but this is where we take under the alert parameters. This is where we take the property bags, which are outputs from the script. And so we'll get the normal stuff, object, counter, instance, last sampled value, the number of samples, but this is the real one, the processes by CPU. So this is the process is consuming the most CPU, and it outputs that right into an alert parameter for a rich alert description. On the other side, the configuration of the monitor, all monitors have configuration. This is what we're going to pass into the monitor type. These are the things I want to look at. So, processor time, processor, how often do I want to run this? And again, I can run, since this is a standard perf threshold monitor, I can run this at a very high frequency. There's no impact to the agent because this is a native perf module. So I can check every 60 seconds. If you look at our built-in CPU monitoring, we only run the CPU monitor every 15 minutes. And we need 3 samples, so it's like 45 minutes before we let you know there's a CPU issue. The part of the reason for that is it's a pretty heavy-handed script that runs every time that we do CPU monitoring. This way, we're only even triggering anything advanced if the processor is above a threshold. Now, my threshold is really, really low. I've got it set to 5 just for the purposes of the demo. And 3 samples. But again, you can set these to whatever it is you want. And then this is where you can customize it very easily. You can just expand it, copy out your PowerShell, paste in your own PowerShell if you want to do something different. And as far as the script, just to get an idea of what I'm actually doing, it's really, really basic. I'm just getting all the top processes through get counter in PowerShell. So I'm just getting, what those processes are. And then I do a little bit of math. I divide by the number of cores. That's very important because the process perfmon can actually be greater than 100%. And I also, one of the things that whenever you do math, you end up with these decimal places that are really ugly. And so I round that to 2 decimal places. So the data actually comes back looking nice. And then I output that as a property bag right here. And then that property bag is what we consume into the alert description. So let's see it in action. That's a lot of talking about how it works. Let's just kind of walk through it. So back in my MP author, I'm going to do a new management pack. And let's just call this demo CPU. And SCOM 2016, empty management pack, finish. So now I've got my empty management pack with nothing in it. And once again, I'm going to do an import fragment. And I'm going to browse. And I'm going to go grab my consecutive samples then script. And this is just a standard fragment that's in my fragment library. So let's grab it. And then we'll start filling it in. So my app name, I'm just going to call it CPU. I'll go ahead and target all Windows Server operating systems, but you could also do a custom class here. Let's see, process. Let's just call this top process included for a unique ID. This just makes the workflow unique in case I'm using it multiple times in the same management pack. And this is where I can choose what perf counter I want. Select actually makes that really easy. They have an object browser where they'll look at, you know, the local machine or a remote machine, and you can pick through just like you would perfmon and find the counter that you want. And then last thing I have is the threshold. So I've got it set really, really low. I would never want a 3% processor threshold, but that's for the purposes of the demo. Okay, and then if I wanted to modify other things, then I could do that here by, let's see, let me move this down. Hopefully, hey, look, I got my import button. So if I wanted to modify other things, I could edit the XML. So like for instance, I'm gonna go into my monitor configuration. If I wanted to change the frequency, if I wanted to change the number of samples that are required, I could do that here. If I wanted to edit the script directly, I could do that here. So, you know, right here in the tool, I can edit the XML. These could also be made to show up here as parameters. I just left the most common scenarios alone. And then when you deploy this, you can just edit the XML very quickly to change it if there's something else that's not a common parameter that you want. So I'm just going to say import. We're done, right? So really all I had to do is provide very limited information, and that's it. We're done. And if I go look in the management pack, I should have a monitor. There it is. Yep. And it's very, very simple. And then there's also a unit monitor type, which is my custom unit monitor type that takes the script body and runs the probe action to do the output. So let's save this and let's just deploy it. Oops, deploy. And while that's deploying behind the scenes, I just want to go show you kind of what got created and how you could tweak it or change it to however you want. So back in my development folder, there's my CPU, and I'm going to open this up. And I'm going to collapse these down. Okay, so here's your basic management pack. It's very, very simple. You know, what we created, this demo CPU. It has a manifest with the references. Everything here is all standard. But you'll see I have one monitor that has my you know, demo CPU, then my unique ID, which is that top processes included, perf, then script monitor. And if I look into there, it's going to be all the things that we kind of saw in the PowerPoint, the customized alert settings. I actually added a new one. I wanted to see the total number of cores because I felt that was like relevant in one of these alerts to kind of understand how many cores does this box even have. And so that was really easy for me to add. I did that this morning. It's just a matter of dumping something from the script into a property bag, and then I can put it into my alert description. And I can now edit this in the console. I don't have to use Notepad or Visual Studio or Select. I can actually just go into the console and make changes to this. It's a normal monitor that the console understands, especially from the alert perspective. And then here's the, you know, the configuration and the script. And so I wanted to show off the property bags because this is the most important thing. So what drives the monitor state is, I tend to do this in a lot of management packs. I'll just output a property bag that result equal bad, you know, and if result equal bad, that's going to drive my monitor state to be bad. And that's going to say, yep, this is, you know, we're over a certain amount of CPU, or in this case, if I'm running this script, we're bad already. But I could put additional checks in the script. So for instance, maybe I want to measure another perf counter and like look at system processor queue length, and that has to be over a set threshold, well, then I could output good or bad based on that and actually drive monitor state. So I'm outputting just the standard perf stuff that you would see in any perf monitor, but here's the good stuff. This is the customized things that we want to show, like the top processes by CPU. Or the total number of cores. These are just PowerShell variables that have been populated above through just normal PowerShell things. So this is just a standard key pair that our script outputs. So you can output as many property bags as you want in your monitoring script, and then you can pick and choose how you want those displayed in the console. And so if I go look at the alert description, it's actually really easy to change in XML, or you can do it in the console or any other tool. So here's my alert name, my demo CPU percent processor times breached a threshold, and the standard stuff, object, counter, instance. But here is where I put the total number of cores and the process is consuming the most CPU. And we can take a look at what that actually looks like. So I'm hoping by now I will actually have an example of one of those alerts. So let me go to the console and refresh. Yep, I've got 3 of them. So let me close. I don't know why I've got some of this stuff going on. Let me close all this. All right, and so here's a domain controller. And let me pull this up. And so I can see, yep, my CPU has breached the threshold. And I can see, and what this is totally open to whatever I want. Here's my object. Last sampled value was 5, the number of samples, the total cores, and then here are the processes consuming the most CPU. So I don't have anything that's really a runaway. Let me look at, I don't have, so yeah, there we go. There's Windows Server 2019. This one happens to be running a CPU consuming task. So I can see, 2 cores, processes consuming the most CPU. Here's my offender, 50% CPU coming from a process called processor hog. Now that's just a utility to actually hog CPU, but you get the idea. This, the ability to take a standard perfmon monitor and then go get other data and enrich it is really, really powerful. And there's lots of scenarios where customers would say, I really like this, but I wish it just did X, Y, and Z. Or one of my customers, they wanted disk monitoring, but then on the C drives only, they actually wanted an attempt to clean up space using some standard space cleaning utilities they do before generating the alert. The standard response in SCOM is to run that as a recovery. The problem is we generate the alert, we generate the ticket, the recovery runs, we clean up the space, and then 15 minutes later we close the alert because we see that there's enough free space, and then we close the ticket. And you end up with a lot of wasted processes and efforts and assignments and automations do that. So the benefit here is we can run those automations before actually generating the alert in the first place. And we can add a lot more good information that makes the ticket a lot more actionable or provides more information to, the first level support people. All right, and so let me think. I think that's the majority of what I wanted to show today. Yep, that's pretty much it. The fragments are available for you to download. I've got the resources. You can just search a search engine for my name and fragments, but I'll also include these links in the deck that I give to Silect. But basically, the fragment library is available. There's the download for Visual Studio. I've got like step-by-step in how to do this in Visual Studio, and I have lots of YouTube videos from previous Management Pack universities where I walk through real basic stuff. So if you're just starting out with fragments, this was some advanced stuff, some advanced concepts today. But if you're just starting out, you know, I recommend looking at some of the previous sessions where we walk through the more common scenarios of creating managed packs using fragments. Most of my customers today are leveraging these. And they've really found that they make their lives a lot easier. They make better quality management packs. They don't have a lot of the challenges that the console creates when you try to, especially around targeting and creating classes. So if you're interested, go look at those previous videos. They're also on my blog. So you can go there and just search fragments and you'll be able to find them. Okay, so with that, the remaining time, I guess I'll use for Q&A. I'm hoping we have some questions.
Yeah, we certainly do, Kevin. We have some questions there, and while you start reviewing and getting to those, I encourage everybody else, if you do have any questions at all for Kevin or for the SILAC team who is still on as well, any scenarios regarding MP authoring with fragments or without fragments, please use that Q&A section to ask your question. So Kevin, why don't I hand it back to you? You can walk through the questions that have been asked so far.
You bet. So it says maybe overkill, but if you separate the rule and discovery into different MPs, shouldn't you be able to create a seed target of the X number of agents you want to copy to? Then network traffic will be much less. So absolutely, Patrick, that's correct. If you instead of if I target Windows Server operating system, everyone's downloading that management pack. If I'm very careful in creating a separate MP that does the discovery for the agents that maybe need the update, let's say. And then my second management pack, which contains the bundle and the file, I only target that custom class. The benefit of that scenario is only the agents that need it should download it. And so, yeah, that's true. And that's a great idea, actually, if you're going to do something that all the agents don't need. The other thing, you know, there's a scenario where you can say, oh, well, I want to control the release of this. Well, the challenge is if you can disable the rule and to not copy the file on all your agents, but as soon as you import it, they're all going to download it and it's going to contain that resource. So it's only if you have a management pack that targets a class that not all agents have an instance of, is there a chance they won't download it? So with this example, should we be able to disable the built-in monitor? Absolutely. So like some of my customers already do that. One of the things I do not like about the Microsoft management packs for operating system is we had, some OS, disk, and memory monitoring for 2003. Then we had to do it again for 2008. Then we had to do it again for 2008 R2. Then 2012. Then 2016. And you see the problem. You can see why we're moving to version agnostic management packs. So I take it a step further. I like to just say, hey, disable all of our built-in monitoring and create one monitor and target Windows Server operating system. If there isn't anything in the monitor itself, there's no reason to separate those into different MPs. I think from a development perspective, it made it easier as new OSs came out. We created new classes and new management packs for each OS. The challenge there is the customer now has to have overrides on 4 or 5 or even 6 different OS versions and try to keep all of that maintained, and it's a huge pain. So there's nothing wrong with disabling, and I actually have a blog post on that where, let me see, where I talk about how does CPU monitoring work in our current 2016 and later management pack, because a lot of people don't understand it and they don't like it. And so one of the things I even talk about, hey, if you don't like the way this works, just disable it and create your own consecutive samples or average monitor. Or what I would recommend is using the monitor that I provided here, through this fragment, because our built-in ones, hey, they work good and they do some unique advanced things, but they could be made to be much simpler and to provide more information. So yeah. So another question is the disk cleanup fragment available in your library? I don't Karen, I don't have that. I haven't published that. I didn't actually write the disk cleanup, and my customer wrote the script. I just helped them implement it in a management pack. So I think every customer, what they consider standard cleanup is different. You know, like this customer deletes everything in all the temp folders. They clean up like the software distribution folder. You have to be really careful with some of those choices. But what they found is they found that if they don't have 4 to 5 gigabytes free on the C drive at any given time, their patching would fail. And so they found out the overwhelming majority of why their servers were failing during patching or weren't getting up to date was low disk space on the C drive. And even though it wouldn't be below the threshold, so no alerts were going off because it had more than a gig free, but it had less than the 3, 4, 5 gig that was necessary based on the size of their patching bundles and all the temporary space and things like that. So I've not published that. I could do it, but I think it's going to be very custom for everybody. If you just look in the TechNet script galleries, you'll find lots of examples of cleaning up space, freeing up space on a C drive that you could implement into that. So is there a way to add this type of alert information to web monitors? So Gerald, no, that's a tough one, right? Because the benefit of this is we're running a script. Now, I will say this could be added to any custom monitor or monitor type. So the web monitors are a little unique in the modules they use. They're very, very tight on the native modules, things like that. This is very custom. Like once you go custom, you don't get the benefit of using like the interfaces for that, the web transaction and web availability monitoring. Those create very, very specific monitors. You can't modify those after the fact, or they no longer work in the console. So I have had customers ask me to help them with custom URL monitoring, where we discover their URLs from like a CMDB or a CSV file. And then we do customized levels of monitoring, and they find that easier because then they just maintain a CSV in a network share as opposed to using our built-in UI. But both of them are valid. It just comes down to how much customization do you need and what kind of skill set do you have. All right, and then probably off topic, but related to VSAE, is there a possibility to have resources as dynamic paths? We're struggling with this issue and we can't get to it. So I don't really know exactly what you mean, but I'd like to know more about that, because I tend to default to very simple and basic mechanisms. So shoot me an email. It's just kevin.holman@microsoft.com, and give me more information about what you're looking for there, because as I'm playing with this more and more, I'd like to know what the challenge is, and I don't fully understand it. All right, I am getting an alert from my Exchange 2010 MP, sustained for 10 minutes. MP hard codes the alert severity is critical. Would it make sense to disable this alert and then create a fragment just for that? Absolutely. It's an incredibly common thing. The Exchange 2010 MP, as most people who've been around SCOM for a while well know, it's a weird management pack. So it uses monitors, and those monitors submit state changes, and then there's a correlation engine, and its job is to look at all the state changes that came in every 90 seconds or 5 minutes, whatever the frequency is for the correlation engine to run. It analyzes all the state changes that came in that time period, and then it uses rules to actually create the alerts, and it makes it really hard to change. So most of the time when I have customers that don't like something in Exchange 2010, we do not disable the rule. You never disable the rules in SCOM. You disable the monitors that you don't want, because those are the things that bubble up the root cause. And then you just simply rewrite the monitors targeting the same classes that Exchange did, and then customize those monitors however you want. And then that bypasses the correlation engine completely, and you get a standardized alert like you normally would. And it's a very common thing to do. Okay, let me scroll back down. How to disable all rules and monitors in a smart and quick way. There's actually a lot of solutions out there to be able to do that in a management pack. Do you guys still see my screen? Am I still sharing that?
Yep.
Okay,
We still see it.
great. So if you go to tools on my blog, there is an override creator tool that you can download. And this override creator, it will create, it'll let you create an override for everything at once. And I'm sure Select in MP Studio has the ability to create overrides in bulk. Did you guys is that a common scenario that you guys deal with?
Yeah, there's two ways to do it. Use an override generator. It's in the docs, and you can also go and open the MP, select all the monitors, and do manage overrides and change them all to disabled. It's fairly simple to do.
Yep. Yeah, and so someone said a better solution for Exchange 2010 is beat your admins and migrate off of Exchange 2010 and get rid of the MP. I could not agree more. It is one of the banes of my existence is I still have customers that have mostly migrated to Office 365, but they'll still have some on-premise infrastructure, and some of it is still Exchange 2010. Luckily, that management pack which is very, very heavy-handed. Luckily, as the number of systems that it has under monitoring decreases, so does the load and the impact on the management group. So it's not the nightmare that it once was, especially if you have a large number of Exchange servers. One of my customers has 300 or 400 mailbox servers. And so you can just imagine the load. We had to have a dedicated management group just for Exchange because that 400 mailbox servers is the equivalent of 15,000 Windows agents. So that management pack, is one that we're very happy to see go away. And I love the Exchange 2013 and later MP because it uses very simple event data sources, and Exchange does all the monitoring built in. So, all right. So I see another question. When using PowerShell, enable SCOM notification subscription. Is there a flag to generate alerts from? Oh, I don't know. So available in the UI. I don't know if that's a UI functionality or not. I'd have to research that. I don't know if anyone else on the call knows the answer to that. But yeah, that's a great question. There also was a tool that on scom2k7.com, which he created a tool that's a free download that's a notification like enabler disabler. And he tends to use things that go beyond PowerShell, but he'll call into the DLL, and the DLL will have methods that might not have parameters in PowerShell. So if you can't do it directly using that PowerShell commandlet, it is possible that you can load the DLL into or the method into PowerShell and then call parameters that don't exist in a standardized commandlet. So I'd have to look into that. I don't know offhand. So we've been migrating to EXO for 2 years now and only have a few hundred mailboxes out of 6,000. Get out, yeah, I don't doubt, Eric. That would be incredibly frustrating. All right, that's all the questions that we've got so far.
Kevin, Mike here. I actually had one question. The monitor that does the disk cleanup, that could take several minutes to run to complete that monitor. What effect is that going to have? Does that hold up all the other evaluation of other monitors and rules in the agent, or do they run in parallel?
Oh no, it just spawns that off, and yeah, they run in parallel. So there's no like first in, first out queue. Everything. So for one thing, the agent can deploy multiple monitoring host.exe processes. That is the worker bee process. So, but you're right. That disk cleanup, in fact, we had to time it out to be like 45 minutes because that's how long it took to complete. So one of the things you'll notice in every PowerShell script I write, including like my SCOM demo PowerShell script, I think it's called demo. Yeah, my SCOM script template. So one of the things I always do is at the end of every PowerShell script I write in SCOM, I will always capture the end time and capture the script time and output how long that ran. And I demoed that today when we were looking through that. So I always want to know, it's one of the things that annoys me about a lot of our built-in management packs. I want to know how often PowerShell is running, and I want to know how long these scripts are taking, because it's very important. You know, if there's a script that's taking, 5 or 10 or 15 minutes in my environment, that's going to be an area that I'm either going to bubble that up to the product group and say, hey, this needs to be made more efficient, or, this is having an impact potentially. So it really just comes down to, what is the script doing? If the script is running for a long time and it's hammering the CPU at 100%, that's bad, and we need to find another way, right? If the script is simply, running disk cleanup and it just takes a long time to loop through all these directories and run individual file deletes, well, that's not that expensive. Everything else is still happening behind the scenes. So that it's just going to run until it completes. So one of the things we did is we wrote that script in such a way so that if it did time out, it could be the next time it runs, well, actually, it won't roll anything back. It actually did clean up some space, and then we alert off the script timeout to that,
Right.
and bubble that up to let people know, hey, this script timed out. You're probably going to need manual intervention at that point, because if the script times out, that's one of the dangers of requiring the script to complete before generating the alert. You won't get the alert because the initial state change is driven after the script executes. So if the script times out, that's really, really, really bad, right? And so we need to actually, if you're going to depend on a script to run before getting the alert, that script has to complete. It has to be reliable. So that's one of the things you have to be careful of.
So make those timeout values big.
Yep. Or go back to a standard recovery, and just let that run as a recovery, because then you still get the alert that the disk space is low. Then the recovery action is not a dependency to get the alert in the first place.
Right, and the recovery action, it can run a script and it can time out, but it's not going to hurt anything.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. Yeah,
Cool.
Meaning it won't be a stumbling block to receiving the alert in the first place, because that's the most important thing.
Sounds great. Thank you.
So yeah, Stephen Peck, he posted that there is a PowerShell example that's been published already to enable subscriptions with fewer messages. So that's awesome.
Well, I don't see anything else coming in, Kevin. I think that's it. I think we can wrap things up.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Oh,
I just got a couple more questions. Yes. Is there a max number of subscriptions before performance slows down? I've never seen one. So certainly if you're running command channel notification subscriptions, then that's bad, right? Because you potentially, if you're just running, I'm very anti command channel notifications, because we only have a certain number of responses we allow to run simultaneously. I think it's a maximum of 100, and I think we default to something like 5. So that once if you had more than 100 alerts come in that were going to run a command channel notification, we just start dropping them. And so that's bad. But as far as email subscriptions, I've never seen that ever be a limitation at all. So yeah, that's it. And then Eric asks, let's see, this has to do with an MP to dual home, blah, blah, blah. Eric, I'd say shoot me an email on this. Yeah, and we can talk about that. So I think I saw that you asked that earlier today, and I was reading that. I will say this, you could consider something like what I demoed today to be a potential solution if you want to, where you could discover, machines that don't have the right agent version and then automatically upgrade them built into SCOM. I mean, there's lots of ways to accomplish that. If you already have SCCM in place, I definitely recommend using SCCM. Some of my customers don't have they don't work with their SCCM team. They're like totally separate teams, and they would rather, if they can do something simple, quick, and easy themselves and not involve the SCCM team to create a package and a collection and go through all of that, they much prefer to keep it in-house wherever they can. So, but that's a very specific question. Shoot me an email on that. Let's see, that's exactly what we're doing for ticket assignment. Is there a way to monitor for a specific email? That's tough, right? And so what every subscription has the ability to paste the subscription ID into the body of the email notification. And so what I tend to recommend for customers is, if they want to bubble something up, if a specific subscription ID triggers, use like Outlook rules to do something when it contains that specific subscription ID. I don't have any built-in monitoring of mailboxes, but I know that can be done. I know we had a lot of orchestrator stuff in the past for that. Is there a way to monitor the availability of a website which uses single sign-on? I assume SSO is single sign-on. I don't know. I mean, I think once you authenticate, in SCOM, you either authenticate or you don't. I don't know what the single sign-on specifically changes with that. So, feel free to throw a comment on my blog about that, or shoot me an email to give me more information. And let's see, if you run command channel notifications, you make sure you have a closed subscription. You only run the sub on new. Make your script change the stat. Yep. Absolutely, Steve. There's lots of gotchas with those. And are triggered subscriptions logged anywhere? No. And so that's a big pain. I know that there have been MVPs that have written some enhanced notification stuff to better that logging capability. We've gotten feedback, and I'm not really sure, because I know that they started working on that. Like, there's a lot of work being done right now around auditing changes to SCOM and logging that type of stuff. And we've always asked for better logging, because the notification engine for email is a bit of a black hole. What I always tell my customers is I recommend that they create a mailbox for SCOM, and that every subscription they create for their customers, they also throw that one in. And that way, when the customer says, I didn't get an email on this, they can go look in that mailbox and say, yes, you did. And here's proof, because I got a copy of it. That's a tough one. How do we monitor ADFS? George, I don't know. I've heard some complaints about, some managed packs are not being updated. They're probably ones that people don't use that much. So if there's enough community demand, I'll create like an addendum MP like I usually do. Usually I wait for my customers that I'm assigned to ask me for something, and then I just publish it, everywhere. Let's see, can I limit or disconnect console connections? I mean, you could limit them but there's no way to limit specific ones or disconnect specific people. We just don't have that capability. You can monitor for the number of console connections you have on just port connections, like something like NetStat, but we don't have a way to kick off specific ones. And honestly, if they're still maintaining a sustained connection, if you disconnect them, they'll just reconnect. And so that there isn't a real easy way. I know that the console connect limitation is a big pain point for a lot of people, but at the same time, I rarely run into people exceeding that limit and it causing a big problem. They usually don't have that many people that want to open the SCOM console simultaneously. Can we use the all managed service resource pool to run other workflows? Absolutely. I do it all the time. I have tons and tons of examples where anytime I want to create a highly available workflow that runs on a management server, and I don't care which one, I target the all managed service resource pool. Now, targeting the all managed service resource pool and having a class instance hosted by the all managed service resource pool are two different things. Both can be done. There are examples of both. Russ Slayton has a blog on hosting an object by a resource pool. I have written managed packs where I create a custom resource pool and have objects hosted by it. But if you just want to do automation workflows, like anytime I'm maintaining SCOM, I think my SCOM.management MP, the one that I put out that says, make SCOM admin's life easier, I believe I have workflows in there that target the all managed service resource pools. So anytime I'm doing automations and I want it to be highly available, that's what I target. Can I get perf data from SCOM into Azure or the other way around? I know you can get perf data from SCOM into Azure, but you just have to come up with a way to access it and log it. Because log analytics, the way that it collects data is a little bit different. But it does have the ability to do metric alerts. So you could, run some automations that collect perf data from the SCOM database and then drop it into events, and then log analytics can ingest it that way. I personally haven't worked on any projects, but the people who do Azure Monitor for a living, they would probably have more examples of how do I get data from a SQL server and ingest that as a metric into Azure Monitor. Okay, that looks like that's it.
Yes, it certainly does, Kevin. Well, thank you again so much for your regular and continued participation in MP University.
You bet.
And yeah, so with that, I think we're gonna close things up.